Hi, friends. In this series of videos, I'm going to share some of the work I do with a very, very special school district, the Beaufort Delta. This school district is near and dear to my heart. I've been working with them for just about 4 years now. Dear friends, colleagues, and the work is thorough. And as you can see, the Beaufort Delta is in a unique setting. It's one of Canada's most northerly school districts. And schools are very much spread across the Beaufort Delta. Regionally, a lot of them are fly-in only. Some of the schools are quite small. They serve small towns, small villages, small populations. And the Beaufort Delta is very special, partly because of the communities of which the Beaufort Delta serves. A large portion of the families are Indigenous. And with that come really amazing values, beliefs, identities, and stories that the school district has embraced in our planning, in our programming, in our commitments, and in our objectives and strategic plan. So, several years ago, the Beaufort Delta approached me to support them in adopting more of an inquiry stance. And very much looking at the curriculum and looking at the learning through a land-based, localized lens where we start with the identities of which we are serving. And teachers are planning to these identities through land-based experiences, inviting local learning guides into the classroom as often as possible. And I support the district in a myriad of ways. And one way that I support the district is through kind of a cohort model where we invite teachers to come be a part of a bit of a teaching community. Across the school year, we participate in workshops, conversations, collaborative inquiry, and we meet every 4 to 6 weeks online here. And at the end of the year, we engage in what we call a celebration of learning, a share out, where teachers from the Beaufort Delta who have been a part of these cohorts come together virtually and they share a little snippet of their learning journey. And every year, these shareouts are a highlight, the honesty, openness, reflection, vulnerability, and impact of these teachers thinking and planning on student learning, but also on their own learning. It's heartwarming, it's informative, and with their consent, I can share some of those recorded reflections with you here. So I hope you appreciate these, share outs. You're going to be introduced to some dear colleagues, Erica Thompson, Steve Dagar. They helped me facilitate this learning, being from the Beaufort Delta themselves. You'll hear us consolidate some of the teachers sharing, and you get to meet some amazing colleagues from the Beaufort Delta. You get to see into their classrooms. The shareouts are roughly 12 to 20 minutes long. So, get comfortable, sit in, get a cup of coffee or tea. And I invite you just to listen to their reflections, be inspired by the impact that they've helped facilitate, and listen to their own growth, their own learning. And I'm sure you're going to find it not just informative and inspiring, but also deeply helpful for your own practice. And I encourage you at the, outset of watching a video, consider what you may do in your own practice, having learned from these amazing colleagues, these students, their families, these communities, and how this learning might impact you to do something different, to let go of something, to embrace something, and to center something different in your practice. So enjoy. From my heart to yours, I'm really inspired by these teachers and their sharing and the learning that the students facilitated. And I'm sure you're going to enjoy it too.
So through this process, working through it, I decided to use one of the questions we were working on in our class was what does it mean to be Inuit slash Inuk? And some of the provocations used was very much traditional harvesting, meat working, and hide working. So in here you can see that the students are working on, in the first side, cutting up muskox meat that the high school has actually harvested. My junior high class went out earlier on the year but wasn't able to harvest one. We got close, but we didn't quite make it to where we wanted to get to. But with high school bringing back a couple muskox, we want to join in and keep that learning going further from being on the land. And on the other side, it's where they're fleshing and sewing the hide. So you can see high schools mixed in there with them, and everyone's taking part. And this was the provocations we used for what does it mean to be Inuit or Inuk. That also led to further provocations as well, where the school, my junior high class, went out and harvested 4 seals. The school kept 3. You can see there they're cutting up and butchering it up. then fleshing the hide, and also a picture of them out in the land. Engagement was high for the most part during these activities. I will say it's hard because you can't keep every kid moving all the time. Um, they can't all be engaged or have hands on all the time with what's going on. So it's one of the challenges I found is finding what how to keep every student involved the entire time, especially where there's only so much room on the fleshing board or there's only so much room around the hide to sew. That was one of the challenges, but kids were engaged. They were curious. They were asking questions. They wanted to try again. They were always trying to try and make sure they got another turn for trying to flesh or cut up the meat. Through that, we kind of use these to go into some thinking routines with the spider web one, allowing them to document what they learned through these activities. This was kind of their way to encompass everything that they were taught, what they learned new, maybe something that was said. It was interesting because a few of the kids even put up, like, I learned how to be calm. It's like learning through that process of being patient, feeling relaxed while working on the hide, not being as stressful as maybe doing math work where it might be a little more challenging. It's something that they've seen around their community, they see at home. It was something that kind of brought calmness to them in the school, which was nice. Then we moved on to a notice, wonder, know, and we kind of started off with like, what do you notice about like what it means to be Inuit? Like, what do you notice about Inuit people? Some of the kids very much took it very literally. As you can see, some put short, some put so they have dogs, dog sledding, all different questions. And then we went to wonder. So they built questions on what they might have about being Inuit or their culture or traditions. So wonder how much money Inuit people make, why they have so many kids, how long the Inuit cultures be around, how many elders still speak our language, those types of questions. And then moved on to know, where we've seen some overlay between notice and know. But again, there was also some new things on there with being resilient, innovative, storytellers, those types of things. This was done collaboratively where they got to kind of work in groups, come up with what they noticed, share out, and then go back and forth that way. Then we took our questions from the wonder and we'd worked prior in the year as well on what open and closed questions were, thick and thin. And I think this led to a lot of the success in this part of the unit. We're asking our big inquiry question because I noticed there was a lot more open questions and middle ground questions rather than a lot of closed questions like there was at the beginning of the year when we kind of worked on open and closed questions. Went very well. Kids were super engaged. They super enjoyed this. I think a lot of it was they were pulling from that confidence they had throughout the entire year of working on this and recircling back to it. Went very well. I was actually, I don't want to say surprised, but super proud to see that they had got those skills to move forward and be so successful in this. Planning for next steps. What did I see? I seen increased engagement when the provocations were hands-on and were traditional and were in on things they already knew or things that they had seen people do before. They felt had that confidence to continue to work that way. And I also found it allowed having elders in the room working on a hide rather than just having an elder sitting at the front of the classroom and talking and telling what's going on or talking about the history of the past. This allowed for a lot more just conversations and questions to flow and happen naturally, which I always find is great for the kids. It kind of helps take out a little bit of that awkwardness or the quiet time where kids might not know what to ask. They can just be fleshing and then they can ask a question. Gaps I noticed needed attention. Providing and finding efficient means of students documenting their own learning and questions. When you're working on seal hide or working on muskox hide or doing something on the land, I've always found it a little bit challenging to find very much in the moment and respectful ways, as well as like things that just work easily for the kids. Because while they're out on the land or fleshing or sewing hides, it's hard for them to remember or know to, okay, maybe I should write what I'm thinking, or I asked this question, the answer is, should I go write it down? So I've always found that a challenge. Photos do work great for kind of getting what they're doing and maybe what they might be working on that moment. But definitely one of the challenges that have been working on through the time is finding efficient ways to document what they're thinking during those times. And also another challenge was planning to having thinking routines and question routines in ample time after the activity. So if we went out on a Friday, which we did for our seal hunt, and we did the butchering and also getting the hide kind of worked on a little bit. It was okay, we worked on Friday, but now we're to Monday, and kids are kind of forgetting some of the conversations that happened or some of the stuff that happened because there's that delay in when it's happened. Feedbacks, same as I've seen mentioned a few times. Kids always want that. Am I doing this right? Is this a good question? Um, is this a right answer? Those types of things, and it's trying to get them. The challenge was definitely trying to get them to realize like this is if this is a question you're interested in, this is something you want to look at, this is something you're curious to know, this is a good question. It doesn't just necessarily have to be, is this what I'm looking for? Look at what you're interested in, those types of things. Reflection forward. Notice hands-on, play-based, and traditional provocations led to higher engagement. It also allowed the students to showcase their strengths. As well, I'll add in here that these students now, we actually got gifted another muskox hide to the school, and they're going to teach a 1-2 class how to do the muskox hide. So now it's not only taking that they feel confident to learn from somebody and feel confident skills, but now it's showing that they've learned these skills and teach other kids how to do it. Can be challenging, like I said, to have all the students engaged during the whole length of the activity, especially where there's only a limited amount of space around to hide. How to allow students to document their own learning, thoughts, and conversations, definitely a wonder. That's one I have been working with challenge throughout all these on the land excursions or muskox hide or cutting up meat activities. It's hard to, like, if you're cutting up meat, your hands are bloody, or if you're working on seal hide, they're oily, just finding ways for them to be able to document what they're thinking. How to help hold on to the information for thinking routines again, like through the weekends. If we do it on a Friday and then we miss out for that weekend period of doing the thinking routines, kind of losing that information over time if it doesn't happen amply afterwards. One thing I noticed is students are engaged, their enjoyment is up, they feel confident in showcasing their skills because this is something they've seen before out in the land, and it leads them wanting to go further with it because it's something that they see their family members or their elders or their brothers and sisters doing. And the more comfortable and confident students take on that teacher role, this may be new for. Sorry, 1 second, that sounded confusing. My bad. The more comfortable and confident students take on a teacher role with students, this may be new for. Like, it was interesting with them teaching their 1-2s. I actually had a couple students that didn't know how to actually tie the sewing needle, and students that knew how to do it would teach them how to do it. So it was very interesting to see those leaders in the classroom and also feel that confidence while they're doing it. It was awesome to see because some of these students didn't feel confident in the classroom when we're doing math or science or literacy. But then when a muskox hide or a seal hide or cutting up meat came out, they had all the confidence in the world. And it was nice to see them be kind of highlighted and shine in that moment. And that's it.
Yay, Noah. Round of applause, my man. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Really, I've got a lot of notes here on things I appreciated. Steve, I'll engage you first, and Erica, and then we'll save me for last. Steve, you want to begin with some celebrations and noticings from Noah's share out? You're muted, Steve. Rookie move. That's okay.
Such a rookie. I clicked it, but I just lotioned my hands, so it slipped. Anyway, I got a lot of wonderful things that I want to talk about. The last thing I wrote, and this has been a theme that we've been seeing throughout this entire ShareFest, is local equals engagement. And the more that we are localizing our provocations and the things that we're doing with the kids, the more that we are hearing kids are engaged. That does not mean 100% of everything you do has to be based right here, because obviously we are trying to start local and then give perspective to our students. But if we can focus on getting the local aspect to it, kids are switched on. And so Noah, I know in the last couple of years you've done such a wonderful job at giving kids opportunities to seal hunt or planning some of these on the land trips. So kudos to you. I do also want to highlight a reflective question that you asked, which I thought was really huge. And that was when the students were, I think you called it fleshing the seals. I'm not a hunter. I'm a suburbanite. I'm so sorry. But when they were engaging with the seals, your reflective question, which I don't necessarily have an answer to, but it would be a wonderful conversation to have with students or with other colleagues, is how do I keep my students engaged slash involved all the time? And I guess the question is, do they need to be engaged all the time? Maybe they do. I'm not saying that's a no question, but that is a wonderful question to take back and think, okay, well, while the 3 or 4 students are engaged in the actual thing, what can the other students, so I'm not like losing their interest, or they, the behavioral stuff starts to happen. What can we do with those kids? So what a wonderful question to ask. I do, my last thing I just want to note, because I don't want to take all the thunder away from Trevor and Erica, is on that Notice Wonder Know. First of all, amazing job. Your kiddos came up with some really cool things. I did see something that I am particularly interested in, and is scared of little people. And if you don't know any stories about little people, ask around, because they are freaky stories. And you ask anyone who lives up here on the coast, it's not a mythological legend thing. It is, they exist and they happen. And I thought that was really cool. It's like the second thing down on your notice. So, Noah, thank you so much. Really great job. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you, Steve. Erica.
Yeah, actually, Steve, that question stood out to me too. And I was thinking to myself, a little bit, and even when you were re-asking it, I was just thinking about putting that question back to the learning guides and the elders, because, like that's been the case since time immemorial, right? Like what would be expected of learners not actively engaged, right? And then is that a conversation that could start it off so that those expectations are kind of clearly delivered, but not by you, right? And would that change things? And would that just open up the conversation for students to brainstorm some things that they could do to stay engaged when not physically engaged, right? And it really does point out that tension. Something I was reminded of as you were talking as well, I had a conversation with a colleague like 2 days ago about trying to help students recognize the disconnect that exists between land-based programming in the classroom. And like that is something that is going to take quite a long time to be able to bring. Like, I love the way that you weave land-based and outside of classroom-based learning throughout the whole year. Right. And I've seen you, I saw you quite a few times this year, and there were every month you've got some kind of activity that's relevant to students that they're interested in, that you're trying to integrate. And sometimes it's about like a thing that you learn while you're doing it. And sometimes it's just about the ability for students to see that consistency of how we can learn and grow, not in the 4 walls of the classroom. Right. And then we can bring it back in. So you're kind of modeling that model all the way through the year. So I really appreciate that it came through and you're sharing really clearly as well, like that is attention, and that's attention that you're not shying away from. That's attention you're talking about with them and trying to figure out. So I appreciated that as well.
Yeah, kudos, Erica. Steve, thank you for that. Noah, so much surface. One observation in your final slide that really stood out to me was that you noticed that enjoyment was up. And in fact, I think that's the first time we've heard that word in the 2 days, enjoyment. I think it's something we all value. And there are synonyms for that, but it's different than engagement. Like joyful learning is a different feeling than engagement. And so I love that you had that observation. I've never heard of the problem of documentation being kids' hands were too bloody or too oily. Like that's just the coolest. And it's so purposeful. It's like so localizing the learning that's the challenge that you're having, Noah. Like that is the coolest. And I echo Steve's observation is, you know, do kids need to be doing something all the time? And maybe Erica's suggestion there of asking the elder to guide the group through, hey, if your hands aren't in it, here's what you might be doing or thinking or looking for. Because as we know, like I think it was Jasmine earlier recognized that just the skill of noticing and listening. And I wonder if an elder were to set the stage or invite or recognize that for the students. Um, I love your observation that when you have an elder come in who is leading an activity, it's a different feeling for your students. That's a lovely observation and something to consider in the future. Absolutely. And that, yeah, students were pulling from confidence from previous experiences, right? Like, poof, so much in terms of your observations, Noah, and your reflections. Again, modeling that inner discourse. Um, at the end, Noah, one more thing. You were hearing from students that hesitancy of, am I doing this right? Is this the right answer? And I was going to call on you to share, how do you respond to that? And I'm not going to call on you right now, but I think that that's something we all hear from kids. Is this right? Am I doing this right? Is this the right answer, or is this a good question? And you modeled it for us. You were like, hey, the good question is the one that you ask. The good question is the one that you're interested in. All questions matter. There's no right or wrong here. There's no grade assigned to this, and all learning is leading us to an amazing outcome. Like, you modeling that discourse for us was beautiful, and it's something that I think we don't talk enough about, is when a student asks us a question that reflects an uncertainty, or, oh, am I okay? What's the discourse? What's our response? And you modeled that for us beautifully. So, Noah, thank you. And yeah, again, proud to be in space with you and hear your share. Okay. Yeah. Appreciate you.
Thank you.